Jeff Goldblum up.
All right, everyone, you caught us. We have another episode of From the Source coming out, and I'm able to interview my good friend Zach Sines from North Highland. Zach, welcome to one of the earliest installments of this podcast we started this year. Thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks, Christian.
We've talked about this a lot, right? But you have one of the greatest office setups ever. I know there's like a Twitter account that manages this. So I think you'd get definitely in the 9s out of 10. You have gadgets, you have lighting, you have everything. So props to you on the setup.
There'll be a 3D printer behind me at some point whenever I get around to fixing it.
Oh, ooh, okay. For the record, everyone joining, there's always some kind of new gadget every time I jump on the phone with Zach. But for more context, this is From the Source. We want to understand Zach's career journey, where he started, what kind of changes and challenges he's seeing in the industry. And then we want to hear some advice, right, for someone who rose the ranks and kind of switched careers a little bit too, but excelling at each one of them. And I just want to kind of set the context. Zach started working with SourceFlow several months ago. We worked on a project with North Highland and rolling out their new career site. And it's been an absolute pleasure working with them and kind of getting them to where they want to go. So that's kind of where me and Zach know each other. He always has these fun requests, right, for our platform, and he's making us better. And hopefully we're making them better. But yeah, Zach, thanks for coming on. And I would love to just learn a little bit more about where your career started first, right? And I think it even mentioned that you started slinging chicken back in the day. But tell us about your first job and what came of it.
So my first job when I was in high school, I got a job at Popeyes Chicken. And it's still there, the location I worked there. Still there. It's at North Point Parkway and Old Milton Parkway in Alpharetta, Georgia. And it was a corporate office or a corporate facility for Popeyes. And we were basically a crew training branch. So essentially we trained franchise owners. So a lot of millionaires were coming in there that had just purchased franchises, needing to learn how to cook chicken and learn how to throw together the Cajun rice and the red beans and rice, all that fun stuff. So I got certified in every job in the store as a 16-year-old at that point, 16, 17 years old, and I was training multimillionaires how to fry chicken. It was a kind of
I love that
fun experience, to say the least.
Yeah, you kind of forget that even the people with the franchise, they need to go actually learn what's going on. So they're not just they need to get into the nitty gritty.
It taught me something that I rarely see, but really appreciate when I do. When leaders do, the smallest jobs at the companies, right? Maybe a multimillionaire running a chicken franchise without knowing how to fry chicken. And I think that is a very interesting staple of AFC and Popeyes and how they had it, especially even back then. I'm sure they still do it today, but it was a really fun way to kind of experience how a business owner learns how to manage that business, even if they have a little bit of experience in cooking. Regardless, they have a very particular process of Popeyes, very particular recipes, very particular, cadence to how things are done. And it was interesting to not only learn that stuff, but then also, train others, especially people that were way out of their element.
Right. It almost reminds me of Undercover Boss, where they get back into it, and see hey, going back to their roots, what's going on in their stores. Mm-hmm. But that totally makes sense. But you excelled at that, from what I gather, and even became kind of one of the most successful stores.
Yeah.
Right?
So we won what was called the Blue Plate Challenge, which was having a certain ranking among all of their corporate restaurants. And so we won that award through cleanliness, as well as, through our service that we provided and all that. Had a very consistent team there, which was also kind of interesting. It was good leaders, kept good team members around. Even, teenagers that were in school, we wanted to work there, not just, had to work there just to get some money. It was a unique experience to get, not only going through that facility, but also that challenge, because you got to see your hard work pay off. We all got little bonuses. We all got, Popeyes bags and stuff like that. So it was kind of a fun experience. The first time I ever won anything when it came to companies.
So that kind of probably gave you a little bit of a spark, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I'm actually just drawing this parallel, which we haven't talked about, of people I've interviewed that got into recruiting, became very successful in recruiting and technology delivery that was in the service industry, right? And I'm wondering if you can like draw any parallels. I think the simple ones are just like people dealing with people and things like that. But like, do you think that kind of thread like is relevant to where you ended up?
I think so. You know, being or having like a servant leader mindset definitely helps out in you know, your career. You tend to support others, prop up others, make sure others have what they need in order to be successful in their jobs. You know, you hope that you have people around you that are doing the same for you, obviously. But I feel like that trickles into the culture, you know, in general. They see one person helping out with supporting others. Others will tend to pass that on. You'll see them paying that kind of stuff forward, and it creates a fun culture to work in because everyone's helping each other versus trying to hurt each other for advancement. Instead, you're propping everyone up, lifting everyone up versus, you know, trying to cut throats and really advance yourself. It takes the bad things we don't like about capitalism out of the equation and focuses more on progress.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. I think also you got a chance to see how business is done right. And you talked about just like the culture, because I think that based on what you've told me about kind of the offices and the career you had from there, it almost taught you like what a good workplace looks like. And not only that, you also kind of developed successful business units within the companies that you went to. So it seems like you might have actually brought some of those learnings into that, right?
I think anyone that's been in a successful team and working for a successful company, they know the feeling that you get when you're on the right team, when you have the right tools, you have the right leaders. There is a feeling to that. There's also a completely opposite feeling when you know you're not in the right environment, or that environment has, you know, poor leaders and such. You know, and I feel like I got that so early on in my career that it was hard to shake. You know, going through my staffing days when I was in staffing, I could tell the right or wrong environment. It just was the feeling that you get in there, the conversations you have with the people, how they interpret what you're saying, how they, you know, kind of carry themselves. You kind of notice little quirks that add up to the collective of if this is a good team or environment to be in. And getting that early on in my career, I think that definitely helped me choose the right kind of opportunities.
Yeah, that's awesome. And obviously we're here because we got to know each other through staffing and recruiting. Tell me, how did you find that first gig? I think you started as a recruiter, as many do. How do you find that?
Yeah, it was a little, my first job was a firm that does engineering, staffing, like civil, structural, you know, mechanical stuff like that. My sister still works there. She's been there for 17 years now, roughly, 15 years. Time's all
it's all messed up. As we let's be honest.
But she's been there since we graduated, and she's very successful there. It wasn't the right environment for me and how I operate, but I kind of identified that pretty quickly. It was a blended desk environment where it was both sales and recruiting. So I had to go find my own clients, my own job orders, and then find my own candidates and close them. Like it was a difficult role, and the markets I had were very difficult markets. It was at the end of 2008 when I got the job. I had actually right when I graduated. Right when I graduated college.
Same. It was brutal.
Yeah. And I went and worked for Lowe's for about 6 months unloading trucks. Had some fun getting hit with a bunch of product whenever you'd cut the security cord on the back of the truck to open it up. But I had so much fun driving those forklifts as fast as possible through those stores. It was so much fun when nobody's there, of course. But,
of course.
It was close. But that job, you know, at that firm was very kind of eye-opening to, you know, kind of how my service background and kind of the mentality that I had built could be applied to working with people. I think that, you know, working for the candidates is really where my heart was and my head was even. I was never the best salesman. I was always a much better recruiter. And I found that out pretty quickly at that company, though I did find a lot of success there because I kind of had to in order to, you know, not only stay employed, but also to try to make a career out of this. working there for a couple of years, I was presented with an opportunity to go start up a firm in Atlanta. And I took that opportunity, worked there for a couple of years. I had won an award there, but it was all dedicated to technology recruiting, which was more in my wheelhouse. I was a web developer from college and all that. So I really wanted to be more in the tech than, more engineering space. So a really good segue into, using my IT background, but also that servant mindset, really focusing on candidates versus clients.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like throughout your career, you moved a couple of times and built successful kind of departments within each company in the recruiting space. But you also, which we know, I mean, you're a manager of application engineering currently in North Highland. It seems like you're kind of nurturing this like tech nerd kind of in the background, right? Since you were like a kid. So tell me how you nurtured that at the same time that you were doing a full-time job in recruiting.
So I actually used it. Used it in a kind of a unique way. We found that a lot of staffing firms, when a specific firm I was working for, TRC at the time, worked there for about 4.5 years. They wanted us to get out to meetup groups. When you're doing IT kind of staffing, you really need to be out in the community and meet people. But I always felt it was the wrong way to do it. You don't just go to a meetup group to recruit people. That's not why they're there.
No,
right? They are there to learn, right? Not deal with a recruiter. So I kind of noticed at my first, I went to the PHP user group. It was run by a guy named Chris Bruck. And I went there and I remember they were talking about Laravel, which is a framework for PHP. And I noticed there was a bunch of people there that had no idea what they were talking about. And they literally got up and left. And I afterwards, I went up and talked to Chris about it. And, I said, why did people just walking out of the session kind of thing? And he was saying, well, they were probably very junior or didn't know PHP and came here to learn it. And that's not what the user groups are designed for, but it's what people assume when they're signing up for these events. So they come out and then they never come back because they came out, we're talking about Laravel, not talking about PHP directly. So they have no idea what you're talking, you're way over their head, right? So given that I was a web developer in college and I kind of wanted to keep those skills sharp, and I had been doing a little bit of web work on the side for some friends, building out like hobby websites or something like that. I basically decided, let's use this, and instead, why don't we train people the basics, which is what I felt I was capable of doing at the time. So we created a meetup group that basically I could train people on HTML, CSS, the basics of PHP, SQL, computer building. We even started getting into resume writing, interview prep, stuff like that. And we would essentially have those people go through a beginner, intermediate, and advanced courses. And once they completed all that, we would send them back to the meetup groups and say, hey, go learn more about this technology. Now that you understand what it's doing and how your fingers interact with the keyboard when using it, now go back and start learning, how to advance those skills. So we essentially were that void that the meetup community had around just lack of knowledge of the technology, of people coming, trying to gain that knowledge from those individual sessions, when in reality they never would. So we ended up going from about 25, 30 people a session with about maybe 200 members in the first month or so, to about 1,200 members running a session every Wednesday. it was like
that's
it was
awesome.
And
that was kind of like a pool that you could work from in the end, but the point is that you were delivering value to them.
Not only to the community, right? We created our own meetup community to bring people into our offices, but then also send them away with skills that they could then refine. We could then write those on their resumes and then submit them to clients. So it was a much better way to approach the meetup kind of community problem that staffing firms tend to find themselves in. But it was such a unique experience to be able to get. Not only did I have leaders that allowed me to do this, we had a facility that was capable of handling this, but then on top of that, I had the skills that a lot of recruiters don't. And because I had that knowledge and experience and I could give it to others and then maybe find a segue to get that into recruiting, I think that was a very unique situation.
Yeah. And I think I draw parallels to, like sales these days, because I'm a salesperson selling software. And I think a lot of teams or a lot of people are taught the wrong way potentially, but also just like, hey, book a demo, sale, feature, but it's not really like delivering value, right?
Yeah.
Like, why don't you try giving people something or creating a space for your potential buyers to learn something?
Yeah.
And then they start to trust you, right? You have a degree of credibility, and they don't mind when they're ready, when they're in a buying cycle, they're likely to engage with you, right?
Yeah. I think that's servant mindset, but going back to that, right? Like the more you give to others, the more they give you in return. And I feel like, a lot of people are short-sighted in that, where they're like, well, I just need to take. My end goal is to take. Goal should be to give. And the fun, side effect of that is that people can give back, to you in some way, shape, or form. I feel like the constant take mindset, that sales tends to have. I mean, I've seen it, I've witnessed it. That puts you into corners in a lot of cases, or the salespeople can then end up turning into being like, whenever they call their managers are like, oh, I've got to take this call.
Yeah.
I was going to
yeah.
something.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. Now, switching gears here a little bit, you've been in recruiting a long time, and then you've become a true like technologist here, managing a tech stack. I would love to learn kind of like the biggest changes you've seen. Of course, recently you could say AI, but I guess the biggest changes you've seen in the industry and how you're addressing them through technology. What technology is helping you solve, and maybe a little bit about your day-to-day there at North Highland.
Sure. AI is obviously the big trend that I'm seeing today.
Right.
But I also am seeing a big trend of people not understanding how to use it.
Right.
I think there's a lot of fear around it in the industry right now that it's going to replace a recruiter. And I just don't feel like that's the case. I mean, if you're thinking that way, then you're approaching the tool incorrectly. I feel like you'll never get away from the human experience that a recruiter creates with a candidate. They're people talking, and there's a level of trust that needs to be created in that conversation in order for someone to make a career-defining decision that will affect their families, their livelihood, their standard of living, right? The bills that they pay, the food they put on their table is tied typically to their employment. And if you take that for granted by putting an AI in place of a person, your likelihood of getting that person to commit to the opportunity drops dramatically. I don't care what technology it is, what company, sales pitch has it from an AI perspective. You can't replace the recruiting experience, the candidate experience created by having that human to human interaction. But you can use AI to really help out in refining things, really help out in content creation. Like if I need to generate a job description, or I need to create screening questions, Boolean strings, really anything that recruiter note that you would essentially build out and send to a hiring manager for them to review your candidate. You could have all that kind of stuff AI generated, but you can't AI generate a relationship, and that is why I feel like recruiting will always be with people, though sourcing may be a little bit different with AI. I feel AI has gotten pretty effective at that, but even still, reading through the lines, the context of keywords in resumes, and being able to see the right profile. And I say it that way because any recruiter listening to this call will understand exactly what I just said. Profile is hard to train an AI to pick up on because it's such a combination of factors, from a resume, the way it's written, from the content on there, the keyword density, to spelling mistakes, to formatting issues. Everything combined will give you the picture of who this person is, how they carry themselves in their day-to-day life. Even on a phone screen, I got so good at doing behavioral phone screens where I could tell if you were doing your dishes, if you were in the restroom, if your kid was playing in the background. I knew how much attention you were paying to the phone call, and that went into my decision-making on if I wanted to present you to a client or not. And that is very difficult to train an AI to do. Right?
You're right. Yeah. And there's a lot of those voice AI solutions coming out. And I think people are hesitant to do that, which is a good segue. Actually, what advice would you give to other technologists, without going into detail of what you guys are doing, but like what advice would you give to people evaluating AI, any firms evaluating AI today? Because I think a lot of people are also still claiming they're AI, but maybe not. So with someone like you who are dealing with this every day, hearing pitches like every week on it, like what small pieces of advice would you give to those who are evaluating AI or how to use it?
You should really do research and understand what the foundation of these technologies is, like understanding, what an LLM is and how that kind of fits into, the perspective that LLM might give, understanding that, as well as understanding how AI generally works. I could look at a tool that might say that they use AI to, manage this chatbot, when really it's more procedural kind of like decision tree logic that I manually have to build, versus something that is literally interpreting the text and regurgitating generated content. I think that understanding those nuances puts you into a better position to ask the right questions. The vendors can show you, blinking lights and cool colors and, spinning things on the screen. But in reality, what is the return this tool is going to give my team? How is this going to enhance our process, not detract from it? How is it solving problems for us? And is this product something that can scale with our organization? I think that's another part that a lot of people don't look at. They don't look at, if I'm paying for this tool today, what will it look like 5 years from now? And will that tool still be doing what it's doing today, or can that tool grow over time? Do I have the relationship with this company, or can I have the relationship with this company in order for them to build features that help me?
Right.
Not just, hey, here's a new feature we delivered this month for whatever reason we decided to come up with, versus, can you feed me a feature that can solve a problem for me today within your wheelhouse, right? And I think SourceFlow is a great example of that, and how when we kind of approached you guys about this, we had a referral management system that, we really wanted to have that in the system. You guys didn't have that, but you built us a solution that can really help with that. And I think that level of partnership is, there's so many companies that are more transactional versus, really thinking about, well, if I, partner with these guys and they give me good product management kind of ideas, or product ideas that I can hand to my product managers for them to run with, I might be able to sell that to other companies as well. And I add that to my product category. And I think that having short-sightedness in the moment of the decision around that ability for that company that you're working with to scale with you, I think that can be a detriment. And we definitely evaluate that with companies that we talk to about how they, kind of bring in feature requests, how they handle feature requests, what their turnaround time typically is, what their, MSR or MSA kind of scenarios might be. I think that a lot of that kind of stuff is important to North Highland, but also just to me in general. I don't like working with vendors that are only there to transact. I like working with them if they're there to help me solve problems. The better you help me solve a problem, the better I look to my organization, but also the better my team is able to navigate the chaos of recruiting.
Right. And the better you can perform, right? Better your team can perform, right? And which is better for the company you partner with. I can totally see that as an overlooked category of a decision-making process, is actually spending a little more time on the vetting of the partnership and what it looks like, not on day one, which is like, okay, great, we got you to sign, but also like, what does it look like at day 30, 60, 90, 6 months, 12 months? If we're submitting tickets or requests or want certain things done, like what does that look like, right? And are you able to accommodate it? And give me examples of how you've accommodated those requests in the past.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think we were easy with you guys on any of those things.
No, but rightly so, right? Because because you want a partner, and I think some people just overlook it. Oh, this feature now, but we didn't really quite think about. We're opening up these new divisions, and we're going to need this and that, and can they accommodate it? So. No, that totally makes sense. Zach, this has been so helpful to walk through this with you. I think people are going to take some great insights from it. Usually I like to end with a fun question. And I wonder if you have something on the top of your head. What is the worst interview experience you've ever had? I guess keeping it, at least PG-13 or something, but like,
sure. Yeah, I interviewed with a firm one time. I was in between jobs intentionally. And I was having a great time not working. But I was interviewing with a lot of different companies, and I went into this one, and I interviewed with a couple of their lead recruiters to start with, and they were, typical recruiters that I would expect and hope to work with. And then I sat down with one of their directors of sales, and it was just him and I in the room, and he started telling me about how he would attach himself to whatever recruiter he felt was the best at the time. And, he would ride them until they either, failed or became millionaires. And I was like, how many recruiters here are millionaires? And he's like, well, none of them. I'm like, okay. So you ride them until they fail. Got it. And that's not the kind of job I wanted. It showed me a couple of things around, how their sales organization works, that it feels like it's superior to recruiting. And I feel like a lot of agencies are that mindset. The salespeople are more important than the recruiters. I feel it's an equal team, quality in, quality out. You don't bring me a quality job order, I can't get you a quality candidate. It's as simple as that. But I feel like in that situation, that was the wrong way for him to present the sales side of it. So I gave that feedback to my recruiter at the time that I was working with, and she went to their head of operations and gave him that feedback. And I immediately got a request to go to breakfast the next morning with them, specifically that head of operations and that director of sales. And in that meeting, he had completely changed his tone. It was a completely different person, giving me a completely different set of nonsense that I knew was not how he really felt, because he told me how he really felt the day before. So that led into my decision-making process to not go with that firm and go with another one. And I had never seen that level of arrogance in a meeting before, in an interview before. Usually in an interview, you're trying to sell the candidate just as much as the candidate's trying to sell themselves, because it is a mutual decision to take an opportunity position. And that one was just such
man, it's like, that sounds like a Glengarry Glen Ross, like Wolf of Wall Street type of. They must have seen those movies the day before.
I felt like I was going to go in there and either get yelled at on a day-to-day basis or get hit in the head with a Nerf gun on a day-to-day basis, one or the other. Like, the environment was too wild and not controlled enough around process. But also then you had, people like this director of sales that just, wanted to use people in the organization as if they were superior, or as if he was superior to them. And that's not a team. It's just not. I don't care how you cut it. It's not. And it's not something I want to work in. And I feel like a lot of people, when they interview at different organizations, they don't necessarily look at those types of intangibles. Not just, is this the right job for me, but are these the right people to surround myself with? I'm at the age of my career where I can choose my manager. Right. I can choose the team I work on at this point with the amount of experience I have and the way my resume looks. And, being in that kind of position is fun, but also at the same time, it takes some, learning from, mistakes that I might've made in career direction or decisions I made throughout my life. But, best advice I can give is make sure you read the room.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about vetting technologies, and it's usually the other way around. But of course, as you're navigating your career, which this is all about, is spend enough time researching also the company you're working for. I mean, you might be really desperate for a job, but maybe, and that might kind of compromise that decision a little bit, but spend time there and understand who you're working with before making that final decision, right?
Yeah, well, that's a job decision versus, a career decision, right?
Right.
If you have to make a decision, you have to take a bad job, then take it, but always keep that one foot out the door.
Right.
Especially if you see that writing on the wall that this is not the right kind of environment to be in.
Yeah, life is short. Let's spend a lot of time at work. Let's try and at least enjoy the time you have.
I tell people a lot. The most waking hours you spend every week is at work. So you might as well choose the right thing to spend your life in.
Right.
It's the same thing. Like, you spend 8 to 10 hours a night, hopefully, some people less, sleeping on a mattress in your bedroom. You might as well buy a quality mattress.
Exactly. Well, you've chosen a quality mattress in North Highland, obviously, and they're lucky to have you there. You're doing a great job, and we love partnering with you guys. And hey, Zach, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. Best of luck. We'll keep in touch, and hopefully next time you have some more gadgets in that 3D printer. Next,
I'll try to print some gadgets for you. I'll make sure I got some fun stuff to look at. But thanks for having me, Christian. I appreciate it.
All right, awesome, Zach. See ya.